Everybody will know that ME has got many names: chronic fatigue syndrome, yuppie flu, myalgic encephalopathy. It's not a new illness. It has been known back from Babylon times. A number of well-known people have got it, like Florence Nightingale and Charles Darwin, of course, our Richie Barnett sitting over there. How Ros got into it was in the 1950s. There was a illness that went through the Royal Free London Hospital, and a lot of people got it. Now, Ros started work in that hospital in the 1960s. She studied the illness with a rheumatologist and also tried to treat a lot of people there, and her interest went from there. Now, you'll know before that I actually work in the local ME support group. We've actually been running 30 years this year. ANZMES, the Associated New Zealand ME Society, this is its 33rd year. So in New Zealand, it's been acknowledged for over 33 years. My own involvement with ME was when a family member actually got this illness, and I also had a couple of cousins that got it. I saw the devastation that it caused on that family. At that stage, there was not a lot known about the illness, and there was very little support and help out there. Thankfully, the family member has gone on to be about 90% better and managed to get back to work. In the early days, with having a small family, those with ME will know that you often can't tolerate noise, you often can't tolerate light very well. So when you've got a lot of little kiddies running around yelling and screaming as they do, it was a real trial. In the end, they got a caravan, and he used to go out there, and that just gave a break from all the family noises, and he could actually rest. So the impact on families is absolutely horrendous. We have cases of mothers with small children. They have got ME themselves, and they're struggling trying to keep the family together, trying to look after their illness. It's very, very difficult. We have other cases. I had a lady come in the other day. She has 3 children. 2 of them have actually got the illness, and the paediatricians are now diagnosing the 3rd one as with this illness. And as she said, the amount of pressure that's gone on her marriage, on herself, she's had to give up her position to look after the children. I mean, it's just ongoing. There are now over 5,000 research papers on this illness, showing that it's biomedical, it's of the body, not of the mind, although there is a body-mind mix with any illness. There's about 60% depression with this illness. It's the same as other illnesses like those with rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes, so it's no higher or no less. 85% people have had a physical or emotional stress that have actually started their ME. Things like glandular fever. We have a lot of students in Dunedin. They get glandular fever. 6 months later, they're still battling glandular fever, and they carry on. The hallmark, there's a huge financial loss in New Zealand. You take the number of people, times it by 40,000, that's $800 million a year that's actually lost to our economy. And it's just a huge loss, and it's a real shame that a lot of these people cannot work. Saying that, we have people who are bedridden, and we have those who can work part-time. There's the odd one who can work full-time. Their illness isn't very severe, but they actually will rest a lot in the rest of the time, so they really have no social life. The hallmark symptom of ME are overwhelming fatigue and weakness that makes it difficult to perform daily tasks, like getting out of bed, dressing, sometimes eating. One of the main problems as well as cognitive problems. I had a top mathematician came in about a year ago. He said, I know this, but I cannot make my checkbook balance. The numbers are all going round in circles, and a lot of those out here will have had the same problems at times. Dr. Nancy Klimas was over, ANZME brought her over a couple of years ago. her comment, she was quoted as saying, "My HIV patients for the most part are hale and hearty thanks to 3 decades of intense and excellent research and billions of dollars invested. Many of the ME patients, on the other hand, are terribly ill and unable to work or participate in the care of their family." Dr. William Reeves, former CDC Chief of Viral Diseases Branch in America, said, "We've documented, as have others, that the level of functional impairment in people who suffer from CFS is comparable to multiple sclerosis, AIDS, and end-stage renal failure." So those that are very sick are very sick. There's a 25% group with research that they've shown that they get a little bit better, but not a lot better, and they keep the illness for some years. We'll go back to Ros. She has written this brilliant book here. Warren has actually covered quite a bit of what I was going to say there, but that's fine. I will let you know that Ros is now working on a book for the under 25s, a young people's book, and I've actually read several chapters of this, and it's going to be excellent. She's gone through many of the areas of the body in this book: sleep problems, pain, health management, lifestyle ramifications, and practical day-to-day advice. A very user-friendly book. If anybody would like to buy one of Ros's books, we've got some pamphlets over there, and it has where you can actually order them from. I believe there are a few at the university bookshop as well. We also have the latest CFS booklet. Thank you for holding it up, Wendy. And this is a primer for clinical practitioners. Now, CFS is the international group of researchers and scientists and doctors around the world who have all collaborated, and they have put this book together for doctors to help them diagnose and actually treat patients. One of the main changes that I've found is that there's been such a collaboration of scientists from around the world, and the search for a dedicated medication for ME at the moment is in full swing. ME is actually like a jigsaw puzzle. The pieces are starting to come together, but the puzzle isn't quite completed. There's actually a lot of hope out there with the amount of research that's being done in the world. Japan is now into it. What they've found is a lot of people with ME are type A personalities, very bright, very intelligent, won't rest when they're meant to. How many have had the flu here when they were working and just didn't rest? And they just kept going till they got this illness. I'll just show you this is our ANZMES booklet. We do 4 meeting places a year. If anybody would like information on either the local or the national group, there's a list over there that you can put your name down on. Another booklet Dr. Vellings has written is what we call the Turtle booklet. It's for patients, and it just gives hints on how to actually cope with this illness. We also have a book on pacing. We also have for GPs an exploration of key clinical issues written by Dr. Charles Shepherd. That is actually also an excellent resource if we can get those for your doctors. And this is the form that we have for Ros's book, if anybody would like more about it. So I will finish there, and thank you very much for listening to me.
So that was a question about the fact that the illness sometimes comes out in cluster outbreaks, mentioning particularly Tapanui flu and others. Professor Tate, I think you want to...
I mean, this is a classical response of an infectious illness, of course, where a group like we might get influenza, in the winter, and there's a classical group. But there will be people that have a genetic background which maybe gives them some resistance to it. So you can see a group of people getting it, and if you like, they've got more of a genetic susceptibility. For example, a lot of young people, 13 or 14, get glandular fever. A lot of my daughter's friends did. but she was the only one of the group that actually, you know, went on to this illness, and that probably reflects their genetic background. But, you know, it's the nature of infectious disease illnesses when you see this kind of cluster.
Yes, I'll just say when the swine flu come round, Ros said they got a lot of cases after that, and each time a particular new virus comes round, they often get a cluster around that as well.
So that was a question about how we can encourage the medical profession to understand this and take it seriously. It was a rather general question. I'm sure it doesn't apply to everyone in the medical profession at all.
Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor, but the diagnosis is one of exclusion. You're welcome to take one of the medical booklets there, which explains how best to actually diagnose ME. They've just, at this stage, they've got to check that you haven't got things like diabetes, thyroid problems, done all that. Yeah. Okay. We've got some very, very good doctors in our hospital, which are neurologists, the GP specialists, which I think they call internal specialists now, the paediatricians, which you're a little old for, but I mean, they have been excellent in diagnosing quite a few of our people.
I mean, this is why I think it's so important that the current, you know, group of medical students that are going through get taught properly about the nature of this illness and the difficulty of the illness. As I said, this is a very unusual and difficult illness for the profession to deal with, and one hopes that then there'll be groups of graduates come out who have a better understanding, and so when people like you know, access practitioners, I mean, you will be believed and valid. And to a degree, you know, this is what we're trying to do with our research, is to provide a kind of a simple, specific diagnostic test that will help medical practitioners actually get a diagnosis, because, you know, that's what happens if they can send away, you know, blood and get a series of tests and you get a positive on that, then, you know, you're down the right pathway.
You are crying out for help. You know, it's clear as day that you're crying out, but no one can diagnose you. And I think that is the most difficult part in this whole ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, and people don't realise the enormity of it, what you're going through mentally now, because it's a physical being, now a mental thing now, then you're battling in your head for someone to give you something. That's difficult to go through, and I do feel for what you're going through, because we all went through that. We are going through that now, but you're just going through that early on, and I hope that you can find a doctor who'll get you some help. It's clear as that. So
that was a question about whether subsets exist within ME.
I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do with our study is to get patients who have been diagnosed very carefully, and this is why, you know, we've got a strong connection with Ros, who helped develop the international criteria. I might say, when I first read the Canadian criteria that was developed by an international panel in 2003, I was amazed. I could just see my daughter's illness, and this was the first thing I'd read that really characterised the illness. But new clinical guidelines have come out in 2011. You don't have to have all of the symptoms to be classified. You know, some people don't have GI effects, you know, as I talked about with my daughter. So there's a strong body of people, I think, in the international research community that believe there are subgroups. I'm open-minded about this, and I hope that we might, in our research, actually determine that, you know, to determine, is it a subgroup just because we have, you know, a genetic background, and the illness comes on that genetic background, and so we get a different range of symptoms. We don't get all of them. Or is it that there really are different ways in which the body is responding, and we might see different pathways being affected? And I guess that's kind of where, you know, we hope we go. Some of the work sort of validating subgroups has been the response of people to exercise. Look at what sort of markers, inflammatory stress markers, are coming up with exercise. Some people come up very dramatically and can, you know, with a little bit of exercise, and some people have a more modest response over a long period of time, but that could just be genetic background.
What impact does diet have on symptoms?
We have some information sheets on diet and how to go about diet. With some people, people can be gluten intolerant, some people are lactose intolerant. It's a matter of finding out what each person can eat. Dr. Vellings normally suggests in her lectures that you eat little and often, and from the various food groups, because each food group has different vitamins. She said the true allergies, where people, swell and get hives and have trouble breathing, are very rare in ME.
Do you cooperate with other organisations?
Look, we're happy to collaborate with anybody who we feel, can help what we're doing. In our case, we've targeted in the innate immune system 2 kind of specific molecules, and we're developing the tools for that. We hope in our broader thing we might actually come up with other biomarkers. So, but of course, as a researcher, you constantly getting resources and getting support from people that are experts in particular areas, like the biomarker thing. I'm involved in an Alzheimer's program and a multidisciplinary team, and we're looking also for biomarkers for early detection in Alzheimer's. And so, we've got groups of molecules that we're going to be looking at, just as I am with ME, a new class of small RNAs, microRNAs, cytokines, and we're looking at the activity of all of our genes, in our ME work, just as we've been doing in the Alzheimer's work. So, but, happy to collaborate with anyone that can help us, speed up the research.
That was a question about response to vitamin B12.
Yeah, in my daughter's case, this was tried. She probably, her illness probably was worse as a result of those injections. So I think this is one of the things, whether it be through the conventional route or alternative route, if there are things, they might help some people and not help others, really. I think that's the kind of message, but that's not an anti-thing against vitamin B12. I've just had a series of vitamin B12 injections. So.
They've found that B12 injections help up to about 60% of people with research. B12 they've found is actually shorten the brain and the spinal cord of people with ME often. It can be normal levels in the blood, but that's with research it's shown it's short there. So we have a lot of people that get these injections and they tend to get a boost of energy. Some people it'll last for a week, some people it'll last for a month. There are those it helps and there's those that don't, like many things that with ME, there's no one thing that helps.